Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about installing a door in an existing doorway. Let's say you have damage to one of your doors, you want to replace it, or you just want to change it out for a little updated look. I'm going to show you how to do it. Let's do this. Alright, so your first step, obviously, is to remove the existing door if you're going to be replacing one. And that is unless you're buying a whole pre-hung unit that includes the frame work and the door itself. This, we just painted the existing doorway and whatnot. And we're going to buy a slab door at our local supply house. These do come in standard sizes, typically like 28, 30 inch, 32, 34, actually 34. We'll get to that in a minute here. 36, I believe. This doorway right here is the only 34-inch doorway in this entire house. I have no clue why. I don't know if they had a deal on this when they were building this house back in the 60s or what, but I ended up having to custom order this door to fit here. So to measure, all you want to do is go from the inside of both sides of the door jamb here. I have just a little bit more than 34. It's actually 34 and like an eighth, almost 34 and a 16th. And then your height is typical. Most doors are 80 inches tall. So we'll measure from the ground up. I have about 80 and a half, so I know an 80 inch by 34 door will fit this. So I went ahead and I actually ordered the door. It took probably 6 weeks to come in. That actually wasn't bad with all the supply chain disruptions that are going on and whatnot. 6 weeks was pretty fast. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab the door, we're gonna bring it up here, we're gonna dry fit it into this opening here. We did have 80 and a half, so that does give us a nice clearance top and bottom. You want about an eighth of an inch around both sides and the top. So the door will open and close without binding. So we're gonna grab the door, we're gonna give it a dry fit and see what we got. All right, guys, so we got our door upstairs here. This was custom order, as you can see. It even says special order. From Home Depot. This is a Geldwin unit. 6-panel door, semi-hollow, so it's kind of hollow in the centers here. It is solid around the outside for the actual framework of the door itself. So let's get this unpackaged and dry fit into place. All right, so we have our door in place. It fits extremely tight, as you can see, right up here. It's actually touching. We have a little bit of a gap here, a lot of a gap in the middle, and then it gets tight again. So the door frame itself is definitely not exactly plumb, which is fine. We can deal with that here. But since we want that eighth of an inch around all three sides, we need to do some trimming here. So one tip on a door, you always want to remove material from the hinge side. This particular door honestly won't matter because I ordered it without the lock set drilled out. I just didn't want any issues with the special order. You know, if it did come in and I made a mistake with the measurement, you cannot return a special order door. So I chose to do the lock set myself after the door is installed. We don't need to do anything on the top here. You can see there's a huge gap there. So when we raise the door up to mark out the hinges and whatnot, we know we're gonna have plenty of clearance on the bottom. So I'm gonna take this down to the workshop and we're gonna get trimming. All right, so we got our door in the workshop here. As you can see, this little jig I made here, I just drop a clamp on it and keeps this door fairly steady here. And we're gonna use an electric planer to take off the material that we need to get this to fit. So what we wanna do is, I'm gonna take a combo square here like this. I'm gonna set this for about a 1/4 inch. And I'll show you a little trick for marking both sides of the door. Now, the reason I mark both sides of the door here is so as I'm planing it, I can see if I'm planing it evenly, right? If I have a line on this side exactly the same depth down as on this side, I know that those lines are level through the door. And if I'm planing, if I have more revealed on one side than the other, I know that the material that I planed off, I know that that edge of the door is not flat. So let's show you how to mark this out. I set this for about 1/4 inch here, a little bit less. It's more like 3/16. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this and place this on here. And I like to go this way first because this way my line can be off. I don't know if that line's straight or not. So I like to start this way. So I'll set this on here and I'll draw the width of the ruler itself. And then I'll take it. I'm just gonna drag this down the whole length of the door. All right, let's turn you here so you can see everything. And we're just gonna drag this down, make sure. All right, not sure why that stopped recording, but we're just gonna keep dragging this down all the way to the end. And then when you get down to the end, you want to do the same thing I showed you in the beginning, because that can move a little bit. So we're going to just flip this around so we have this flat surface on the door all the way to the end. And then we'll just mark that. And we're going to repeat the same thing on the other side. Have marks on both sides here. Like I said, you typically want to take the material off of the hinge side, and the reason for that is if you take it off of the door latch side, you're going to change the back set, what they call it, so the center of where the latch assembly is in relation to where the 2 1/8 inch hole that you have to drill for the lock set is. If you take material off of the latch side, that latch, when you go to put it back in, is going to actually move in, and the center is going to be off, and your doorknob's not going to fit. So remember that. All right, so we're going to be using this electric Ryobi planer. This thing's pretty decent. It's not extremely expensive. I would say one downside to it is the dust bag on here. It doesn't hold a lot, especially when you're doing something that's 80 inches long here. You know, for short boards, it probably works great, but this thing fills up in pretty much one pass. So actually leave it unzipped. There's a divert switch on here that will divert the wood chips to either one side or the other. So I have it diverted so it goes into the bag, but the bag's unzipped, and that just keeps the chips from shooting over everywhere, because this is a very messy process. I also put their little fence that comes with this on here, so that keeps me aligned on here. There are definitely some tips using this. If you've never used one before, it's easy to take a big gouge out of either the starting side or the ending side when you're planing. So I will have a video out eventually here, and you can check it out. I'll go over how to use the planer, how to set it up. You can actually even chamfer edges with this. You see that little V-notch on the shoe on here. So be on the lookout for that video. All right, so all we're gonna do here, there's a thumb safety on here. There is a little shoe thing here. This is actually like a little kickstand, and that's to keep, if you put this thing down, it's to keep your blades from getting damaged. We got this guy set for 1/60th of an inch. We'll take off 2 here, and we'll see if we move down 1/8 or not. So the biggest thing with this when you're starting is to make sure that this shoe is flat on here. You don't want this thing up or down like this. That will affect how you start when you start planing. If it's up too high, you're going to leave this little ridge here, and then once the blades hit the rest of the door material, it's going to swoop down like that. So you want to make sure you go on straight. The little shoe, or the little kickstand here rather, will automatically retract as you start going down the line here. right, there's the first pass. One other thing to note too, like I said, when you get to the end, you don't want to hold that on there. You want to kind of lift it up as you get towards the end. Otherwise, you're going to dig into that. Also, another good one here. I like to take my cord and just put it around there, because there's been many a times when I go to plane this and I get to here, and then the cord gets hooked on here, and it pulls me, and I end up messing up and having to do multiple passes to fix it. So, just to save you the trouble here. Let's hit this with some sandpaper. Real quick, knock off this sharp edge. All right, so we get the door back in the room here. As you notice, it fits now. We have about a 1/4 inch gap here. It's a little bit less on the bottom, a little bit less on the top. As we saw before when we were measuring it, that the middle was a little bit wider than the top and the bottom. That's okay though. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna raise this door all the way up to the top of the jamb, and we're gonna mark our hinge reliefs. These guys right here, where the previous hinges were. All right, we're gonna make sure the door is all the way over to the left side so we can mark our hinge reliefs here. And now I'll explain why we want this up all the way. You're probably thinking, oh, hey, if you mark this with the door touching the top, when you go to install the door is gonna be touching the top. Well, yes, if you did it that way, that'd be 100% true. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna mark it here on both top and bottom hinge. This one only has 2 hinges, not 3, like most new doors. We're gonna mark those, bring this down to the workshop, and when we go to lay out and draw our lines on here, we're actually gonna measure up 1/8 of an inch. And what that does is it actually drops the door 1/8 of an inch. All right, so we're gonna mark this right where the opening is here. These are 3.5 inch hinges for this application, or what was installed in this house originally. So we went ahead and bought 3.5 inch hinges with a 1/4 inch radius. So there's a bunch of different options when buying hinges. The length of the hinge, the radius, the most common is 5/8. These are older, they're a 1/4 inch. So we're gonna go ahead and mark this bottom one. You want this as accurate as possible when you do this. And I'll show you what's great about this air shim. This is all we have to do to lower the door. Just hit this button. Then I can lift the door up. These are fairly light because they're hollow. Pull that air shim out. Now we can take the door back down to the workshop and mortise out the hinges. All right, one thing I forgot to mention, after you mark for your hinges here, when you pull your door out, what I like to do is to mark, see if we can get a little extra light here so you can see. I like to mark where the hinge cut is. All right, so typically you'll see, if your door opens into the room, you're gonna see the back side of your hinge plate, and I'll show you what I mean. This is the main bedroom door here. So you can see this, the hinge itself sticks out into the room. So this back side of this hinge here, this whole relief here is cut out entirely. And the rounded portion is towards the door in the hallway. So we want that rounded portion to be towards the inside of the closet. So what I'd like to do is I like to draw a little arrow here. And that tells me that I'm cutting in all the way from this side, and I'm stopping at the back side here, which is the closet side. All right, so we're back down in the garage here, and we're gonna do the layout for the hinges and mortise them out. So if you remember, we took the door and we pushed it all the way to the top and we marked. So we know if we cut the hinge right where it is now, if I mark this and I mortise the hinge reliefs out right now, that door is gonna rub just like it did when we mark these. So what we do is I like to transfer my marks over, use a square. Right, now we can measure in between here. These hinges are supposed to be 3.5. We're exactly 3.5 from the top to the bottom mark. What you can also do is you can measure down with your tape measure from the top of the inside of the door jamb, measure down to the top of your hinge, and then make that mark, measure down another 3.5 inches, make that mark. So we know we want this door to be down from the top 1/8 of an inch. So we have that gap around the top. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna move this measurement up 1/8 of an inch. Each of these lines is gonna get moved up 1/8 of an inch. And what that does is that drops the door down. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna mark the other end here. I am gonna take my square here, and if I drew my lines long enough, I can see them on the other side here. Now, on this particular combo square, on the bottom here, these are 1/8 inch marks on here. So I'm just gonna hop up to the next mark there. And I'm gonna hop up, make sure your line is on a mark, and then move up 1 additional mark. Now that moves that up 1/8 of an inch. There's other ways of doing it, I guess. This is the way I always do it. Pretty simple, pretty quick. And then we'll measure, obviously, make sure we still have 3.5. We do. I erase the old lines just so we don't get confused. And there's our mark. Now, this being up 1/8 of an inch, that actually drops the door down 1/8 of an inch, and I'll have my proper gap at the top when we go to install this. So I'm gonna do the same thing at the other end here. All right, so we're all marked up. Now for mortising these out, the hinges I do have rounded corners. You can do it. You have to use a utility knife and a wood chisel to get that rounded corner. It's a pain. It's so much faster. If you have one of these, I recommend it. Simple little jig from Ryobi. You could probably make your own jig, but this one's nice. It has an adjustable stop in here for different hinge sizes here. If you notice, I have it set on 3.5. So the side, for this particular one, the side that has the black piece on it is the side that's gonna allow you to cut through the entire way. The side that has the green stop, when you put it on like that, that's the side you're gonna get the rounded edge on. So it's important that you put this on the right way, and that's one of the reasons I draw this arrow on here before I take the door out. So all we do is we line up the inside edge of this and the inside edge of this to the marks that we made, and we tighten this a little bit. Now this jig does come with a 1/2 inch router bit, and it comes with a self-centering drill bit, and I believe it was like 26 bucks at the hardware store. Super nice. It helps you install doors really fast, and you don't have to use wood chisels to do this. If you do have square hinges, go right ahead. It's pretty simple. I may put out a video for that later down the line, but I'm gonna grab my router and we're gonna hit both of these really quick. All right, so I have my router here. A little clash of brands, Ryobi and DeWalt, right? I have a 1/2 inch router bit in here. It has a little edge guide on it. And the 1/2 inch bit is gonna give me my 1/4 inch radius when I mortise this out. So I already have the depth set for this. They have a little gauge on here where you can set your router on and adjust the height of your router to get that. I'm gonna have another video on how to use this thing exactly and how to set your height. This height on here is close, but it's not exact. So I'll show you how to use a piece of scrap wood and a hinge and mortise out a hinge and get that hinge plate to fit in there just right. So you don't want your hinge sticking out too far, and you don't want it sunken down too deep, because that affects that gap on both sides of the door. So let's route this out. And all you do is you just drag it till it hits the stop. You hit that stop, you bring it out. And you just kind of go back and forth until all that material is mortised out here. Super fast, way faster than using a wood chisel. So we'll lift this out, we'll check it. I do see a little spot here I missed, so I'm gonna bring it in. Try to get that spot there. Make sure our corners are really good. So that hinge fits in there really good. And that's it. That's all there is to it. That's why I love this thing. Totally worth the money. As you can see, it's mortised out perfectly, ready for a hinge. All I have to do is set my hinge in here. I'm gonna use the self-centering drill bit that came with this kit. Drill my 3 holes. Do the same thing on the other one. The holes are already in the door frame upstairs. All I gotta do is put the 6 screws in here and the door should be good. Alright, so this Ryobi kit comes with this particular drill bit here. This is a self-centering drill bit, and it has this sleeve over the end. I'm not sure what size bit this is. Maybe like an 1/8 or some fractional size. And when you drill, it has a little chamfered edge here, and it keeps it centered in your hinge plate here. And as you drill, that piece keeps the bit centered as you press down. Now, make sure that you have your drill, you don't want to be drilling like this because the screw's not going to sit flush inside of this hinge. You want to make sure you're drilling straight down. So, it's simple as this. That's it. Now, sometimes this bit will actually get stuck out like this, and it's typically just because you have some wood chips in here or whatnot. All you have to do is just hold this right here like this, and just hit your drill a couple times. Or even pop this like that to get the wood chips out, and then it's fine. But you want to make sure when you're drilling these, you want to make sure your hinge is all the way in, because that's going to affect how that door sits in the jamb. If you have stop trim in the jamb and this hinge is not in the right position, it may hit that stop trim, or you may have a nasty looking gap there. All right, so it's that easy. All right, this is the top of the door. Make sure this is all cleaned out real nice. It's the top of the door, so the pin in my hinge goes up. You want to make sure the chamfered or beveled side goes down here. I don't want to install this upside down like this, right? Because the screws don't sit flush. So we want this to be just like this. We're going to take our drill. I'm going to drill that hole out. And if you're finding yourself having a hard time kind of holding all this in place, right, we all wish we had 3 hands to help out doing stuff like this. Drill 1 hole. Drill 1 hole, throw a screw in, tighten it down. And then this thing's not gonna move anymore. And then I can just come in here real quick. Drill both of my holes, put my other 2 screws in, and I'm good to go. All right, so we got our door back upstairs now. All we need to do now is position it in place, screw our hinges in, and we should be good to go. I'm gonna use that same air shim to help hold this up in place while I put the screws in. All right, just like that, our door is installed. It looks great, just needs a little paint. So we'll get to that eventually here. I am gonna make another video here on how to install the lock set or doorknob set for this door. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. And If you found this video useful, make sure you hit that like button. And if you would subscribe, we'd absolutely love that. You hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new videos. We got a ton coming your way. And as always, thank you for watching.